Hey, old man, drive faster. I'm going to be late for lacrosse practice. 17-year-old Blake Hartwell's voice echoed through the school bus. The 68-year-old driver, Thomas Tank Rodriguez, looked at him quietly through the rearview mirror. He had been doing this job for 30 years, but had never encountered such a disrespectful student. Blake continued shouting, getting up from his iPhone. This old man was wasting his time. Westfield Preparatory Academy was Connecticut's most prestigious private school. Annual tuition was $45,000. Most of its students were children of millionaire families. This school produced Wall Street CEOs, federal judges, Hollywood stars. Everything here was built on privilege, power, and prestige. Thomas Tank Rodriguez worked as a school bus driver at this school. At 68, his graying hair was turning white, his face marked with deep lines. He wore a simple navy blue school bus driver uniform. Quiet, reliable, never had an accident, never received a complaint. But his eyes still had sharpness, just like a soldier. Blake Hartwell was one of the richest students at this school. His father was a hedge fund manager. His mother was a famous socialite. The money Blake spent in his pocket was more than most people's annual salary. He had a Mercedes G-Wagon, but sometimes preferred to ride the school bus to spend more time with his friends. This afternoon was different. Blake was late for lacrosse practice, and Thomas's careful, safe, driving style was driving him crazy. "Did you hear me, old man?" Blake stood up, swaying in the middle of the bus. "I said drive faster. Do you know who my father is? He could buy this entire school district." Thomas quietly continued on his route. The speed limit was 35 miles per hour, and he was driving 35 miles per hour. For 30 years, child safety had been the top priority. "I'm talking to you." Blake shouted, "You're just a bus driver. I'm paying your salary. My family's donations keep this school running." The other students on the bus were starting to get uncomfortable. Blake's behavior was embarrassing as usual, but this time he had gone even further. "Blake, sit down," said Emily Chen, a junior-year student. "Mr. Rodriguez is just doing his job." "His job?" Blake laughed. "His job is to serve us. We're the paying customers here. This old man is too slow, too old, too useless." Thomas's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just continued on his way. Blake continued. "Look at him. Can't even respond when I'm talking to him. Probably has hearing problems, vision problems, reaction time problems. This guy shouldn't be driving a bicycle, let alone a bus full of students." These words hurt Thomas deeply. For 30 years, he had never had an accident, had a perfect safety record. Every day he safely transported children from school to their homes. "I'm going to call the headmaster." Blake took out his phone. "This incompetent old man needs to be fired. We need younger, faster drivers who understand customer service." Jake Morrison, 16, sitting in the back of the bus, was a quieter kid. Blake's behavior had disturbed him. "Blake, that's enough. Mr. Rodriguez has been driving us safely for years." "Safely?" Blake mocked. "Jake, this is 2024. We need efficiency, speed, modern service. This dinosaur belongs in a nursing home, not behind the wheel of a school bus." Thomas quietly pulled the bus to the roadside and turned on the emergency flashers. He turned and looked at Blake. "Son, I need you to sit down and fasten your seatbelt. It's not safe to stand while the bus is moving." "Don't call me son." Blake went crazy. "You're not my father. You're just a help. My father makes more money in a day than you make in a year. Don't you dare talk to me like you're my equal." At this moment, a car passing by stopped. The driver's window went down and a voice came from inside. Tank Rodriguez." The car parked, and a middle-aged man got out. Colonel Michael Davidson, retired now, worked at the local VA hospital. He had known Thomas years ago. "Tank, is this you?" Davidson approached the bus. Thomas opened the window. "Mike, long time no see. What are you doing driving a school bus?" Davidson was surprised. "Retirement job," Thomas shrugged. "Keeps me busy." Blake looked with an incredulous expression. "You know this loser." Davidson's face changed. "Excuse me, kid, who are you calling a loser?" "This old bus driver." Blake dismissively waved his hand. "He's slow, incompetent, probably shouldn't have a license." Davidson got on the bus. "Kid, do you have any idea who you're talking to? Some random old guy?" Blake laughed. Davidson looked at Thomas. "Tank, you never told them." Thomas shook his head. "Past is past, Mike. I'm just a bus driver now." "What are you guys talking about?" Blake asked angrily. Davidson took a deep breath. "This random old guy is Thomas Tank Rodriguez, Staff Sergeant, 75th Ranger Regiment. He served in Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. He's one of the most decorated soldiers I've ever known." The students on the bus fell silent. Blake's mouth was hanging open. "That's impossible," Blake stammered. "He's just a bus driver." Davidson continued. "Tank was part of the Battle of Mogadishu in 1993. Black Hawk Down operation. He spent 18 hours in enemy territory, saved countless lives, eliminated 47 hostile combatants." "You're lying." Blake still couldn't believe it. Thomas quietly opened the glove compartment and took out a small metal box. Inside the box were a Ranger tab, Purple Heart medal, and combat ribbons. "These are mine," Thomas said quietly. Davidson saw the medals in the box: Purple Heart, Bronze Star with V device, Army Commendation Medal with Valor, Tank. "You never showed these to anyone." "No need." Thomas shrugged. "That life is over. I'm a school bus driver now." Blake was still in shock. This can't be real." Davidson took out his phone. "Want me to call the Pentagon? They have your service record." Thomas raised his hand. "It's okay, Mike. The kid didn't know, but he was disrespecting you." Davidson insisted. "He's just a child." Thomas spoke calmly. "Children make mistakes." Blake bowed his head in shame. "Mr. Rodriguez, I didn't know." Thomas looked at him. "Blake, respect isn't about money or status. It's about how you treat people. Every person has a story. You never know what someone has been through. But why are you driving a school bus?" Blake asked. "You could be doing anything." Thomas smiled. "Because after 30 years of war, I wanted to do something peaceful. I wanted to protect children, not fight enemies. This job gives me purpose," Davidson added. "Tank, you've been protecting these kids every day. Safe driving, caring for their well-being. It's still service, a different kind of service." Emily Chen came forward. "Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for your service and for taking care of us every day." The other students also joined. "Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez." Blake spoke last. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm sorry I was completely wrong. Can you, can you forgive me?" Thomas put his hand on Blake's shoulder. "Blake, we all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. Can you tell us about your service?" Jake asked curiously. Thomas thought, maybe someday, but first, let's get your kids home safely. That's my mission now. Davidson shook hands with Thomas. "Tank, it was an honor seeing you again. These kids are lucky to have you." When the bus got back on the road, the atmosphere had completely changed. Blake was now sitting quietly, in deep thought. "Mr. Rodriguez," Blake asked hesitantly, "in Somalia, was it scary?" Thomas looked at him through the rearview mirror. "Blake, courage isn't about not being scared. Courage is about doing the right thing even when you're terrified. Did you ever regret joining the military?" "Never," Thomas answered firmly. "Service teaches you values, honor, duty, respect, selfless service. These values guide you for life." Emily asked Mr. Rodriguez, "What was the hardest part?" Thomas was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. "Losing friends, brothers in arms. We went in together, but not everyone came home." "I'm sorry," Emily whispered. "That's why this job matters to me," Thomas explained. "Every day I bring someone's children home safely. It's my way of honoring those who didn't make it home." Blake was trying to hold back his tears. "Mr. Rodriguez, I was so wrong about you, about everything." "Blake, you're young, you have time to learn, time to grow. Use this experience to become a better person." That evening, when Blake returned home, he was a completely different person. He told his family Thomas's story. His father was also shocked. Son Blake's father said, "This is a valuable lesson. Never judge people by their current circumstances. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones serving quietly among us." The next day, Blake came to school. Early, he was waiting for Thomas. "Mr. Rodriguez," Blake approached. "I wanted to apologize again and to ask, would you teach me about respect, about service?" Thomas smiled. "Blake, respect starts with small things. How you talk to people, how you treat others, how you carry yourself. Want to help me check the bus safety equipment?" Blake nodded. "Yes, sir." From that day on, Blake completely changed. He learned not just bus safety from Thomas, but life lessons too. Humility, service, respect. Values that money couldn't buy. At school, Thomas's story became a legend. Faculty and students started looking at him differently. But Thomas didn't change anything. Same quiet, dedicated service. Weeks later, Blake approached Thomas. "Mr. Rodriguez, I've been thinking about military service after college. What do you think?" Thomas thought, "Blake, military isn't for everyone. But if you're called to serve, if you want to make a difference, then it might be right for you. Just remember, it's not about glory. It's about service. Would you help me prepare?" "I'd be honored." Thomas smiled. That year, Blake's grades improved dramatically. His attitude changed completely. From spoiled rich kid to respectful young man, learning values that would guide him for life. Thomas continued driving his bus route, protecting children, teaching lessons through example. Former Army Ranger, now school bus driver. Different mission, same dedication to service. And Blake Hartwell, that spoiled teenager, thanks to the values he learned from Thomas, years later entered West Point, became a military officer, and remembered Thomas's words every day. Service isn't about status. It's about making a difference. Sometimes the greatest teachers come in the most unexpected forms. Thomas "Tank" Rodriguez was the perfect example of this. A war hero, quietly serving, transforming young lives, one bus ride at a time. Months passed, and Blake's transformation became the talk of Westfield. Preparatory teachers noticed his changed attitude, his newfound respect for staff members, his willingness to help younger students. The boy who once threw tantrums about slow service now volunteered to help in the school cafeteria. One afternoon, as Thomas was completing his post-route bus inspection, Blake approached with a thick envelope in his hands. "Mr. Rodriguez," Blake said nervously, "I've been working on something. It's a research paper about the Battle of Mogadishu for my history class." Thomas looked up from checking tire pressure. "That's so? I wanted to understand what you went through, what you and your brothers experienced." Blake's voice was steady but emotional. "Mr. Rodriguez, I had no idea. The 18-hour firefight, being surrounded, running low on ammunition, ... How did you survive?" Thomas straightened up slowly, his weathered hand still gripping the tire gauge. For a moment, he was back in those dusty Mogadishu streets, the smell of cordite thick in the air, the screaming of wounded soldiers echoing off concrete walls. "Blake," Thomas said quietly, "survival in combat isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about your brothers. You survive because the man next to you depends on you, and you depend on him. In your paper, did you read about Staff Sergeant Danny Chen?" Blake nodded. "He was your squad leader." Thomas's eyes grew distant. "Danny saved my life twice that day. First time RPG hit the building we were in, shrapnel tore through my left shoulder." Thomas unconsciously touched his arm. "Danny pulled me out of that rubble, applied pressure to the wound, got me back in the fight." "What was the second time?" "Later, when we were trying to reach the crash site, sniper had us pinned down for 3 hours. Danny spotted the muzzle flash, called in the coordinates. But to get a clear shot at the sniper's position, someone had to expose themselves as bait." Blake held his breath. "Danny volunteered. I told him I'd do it. I was already wounded, figured I was expendable. But Danny, he just looked at me with those steel gray eyes and said, 'Tank, you've got a family to go home to. I've got a mission to complete.'" Thomas paused, his voice catching slightly. "Did he make it?" Blake whispered, though he already knew the answer from his research. Thomas shook his head. "Sniper got him as he was moving to the next position, but his sacrifice allowed us to eliminate the threat and reach the downed. Airman Danny saved 18 lives that day." Blake was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Rodriguez, in my paper, I wrote about heroism, about how I used to think heroes were people in movies, people who got famous, people who got rich and powerful. And now I know that real heroes are people like you and Sergeant Chen, people who put others before themselves, people who serve quietly without asking for anything in return." Thomas put his hand on Blake's shoulder. "Blake, heroism isn't just on battlefields. It's in classrooms with teachers who stay late to help struggling students. It's in hospitals with nurses working double shifts. It's in firehouses with volunteers who risk their lives for strangers. It's in school buses with drivers who make sure kids get home safely every day," Blake added. "That's right, son." Blake looked down at his expensive sneakers. "Mr. Rodriguez, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about service, about making a difference. My parents, they want me to go to Harvard, become a hedge fund manager like my dad. And what do you want? I want to serve. Maybe not military, I'm not sure I'm brave enough for that. But I want to do something that matters. Something that helps people." Thomas smiled. "Blake, courage isn't about not being afraid. Courage is about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. If you feel called to serve, there are many ways to do it. Would you help me figure out how? I'd be honored." As spring turned to summer, Blake spent his afternoons with Thomas, learning not just about military history, but about values, character, and what it meant to live a life of purpose. Thomas shared stories, not just of combat, but of the quiet moments that defined a soldier's character. In Afghanistan, Thomas told him one day, as they cleaned the bus interior, we adopted a local school. The children had no supplies, no books, barely had a building. So we started bringing them pencils, paper, whatever we could spare from our personal packages from home. That must have been rewarding, the most rewarding thing I ever did in uniform. Watching those kids learn to read, seeing their faces light up when they solved a math problem. That's what we were really fighting for. Not territory, not politics. We were fighting for the chance for those children to have a future." Blake paused in his cleaning. "Is that why you became a bus driver? To keep working with children?" "Partly. After seeing what war does to kids, I wanted to be part of something that protected them instead of exposing them to danger." That summer, Blake convinced his parents to let him volunteer at a local veterans center. He spent 3 days a week helping elderly veterans with paperwork, driving them to medical appointments, simply listening to their stories. One day he called Thomas excitedly. "Mr. Rodriguez, I met someone who served with you." "Oh, who's that?" "Master Sergeant Williams." He said, "You saved his life in Iraq, 2004. Thomas chuckled. "Bobby Williams, how's he doing?" "He's in a wheelchair now, but his spirit is strong. He told me about the IED that hit your convoy. how you went back for him even though the area wasn't secure. Bobby would have done the same for me. Mr. Rodriguez, he said you carried him half a mile to the evacuation point. With your own injuries, Blake, when someone needs help, you help. It's that simple. But Blake was beginning to understand it wasn't simple at all. It was a choice made over and over again to put others first, a choice that defined character. When senior year started, Blake was a different person. His college application essays weren't about family, wealth, or personal achievements. They were about service, about the lessons he'd learned from an elderly bus driver who turned out to be a war hero. He got into Harvard, as his parents had hoped, but he also applied to West Point without telling them. The day he received his acceptance letter from the military academy, he brought it straight to Thomas. I got in, Blake said, showing the letter. Thomas read it carefully, then looked up with pride in his eyes. Blake, this is a big decision. For years at West Point, then at least 5 years of active duty. Are you sure this is what you want? Mr. Rodriguez, you taught me that life isn't about what you can get, it's about what you can give. I want to serve. I want to lead soldiers the way Sergeant Chen led you. Thomas felt his throat tighten with emotion. Blake, I'm proud of you. But more importantly, you should be proud of yourself. You've grown into a fine young man. I couldn't have done it without you, son. I just showed you what was already inside you. The character, the heart for service that was yours all along. On Blake's last day of high school, Thomas made a special stop on the bus route. Instead of going straight to Blake's mansion, he drove to the local war memorial. Why are we here? Blake asked. Thomas got off the bus and walked to a specific panel on the memorial wall. Blake followed. Thomas pointed to a name engraved in black granite. Staff Sergeant Daniel Chen, 75th Ranger Regiment. I come here every year on the anniversary, Thomas said quietly, to remember, to make sure Danny's sacrifice isn't forgotten. Blake read the inscription below the name. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Mr. Rodriguez, will you tell me about him, about who he was as a person, not just as a soldier? Thomas smiled, remembering. Danny was from a small town in Ohio. His dad was a mechanic, his mom was a school teacher. He joined the army to pay for college, but fell in love with being a soldier. He used to say that being a ranger wasn't his job, it was his calling. He sounds like an amazing person he was, but Blake, Danny would tell you that he wasn't special. He'd say he was just a regular guy who chose to do his duty when it mattered most. That's what real heroism is, ordinary people making extraordinary choices. As they stood there in the late afternoon sun, Blake made his own extraordinary choice. Mr. Rodriguez, when I'm at West Point, when I become an officer, I want to lead like Sergeant Chen did. I want to put my soldiers first, the way he put you first. Thomas put his arm around the young man's shoulders. Blake, if you do that, if you truly put your soldiers first, then Danny's legacy will live on, through you, and that's the greatest honor any of us can ask for. Years later, Second Lieutenant Blake Hartwell would stand before his first platoon, remembering the lessons learned, not in a classroom, but on a school bus from a quiet hero who taught him that true leadership isn't about commanding respect, it's about earning it through service to others. And Thomas Tank Rodriguez continued his daily route, protecting children, teaching life lessons through example, carrying forward the values that Danny Chen had died defending. Different battlefield, same mission, taking care of the people who depended on him. Sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers, and sometimes a school bus route can change the course of a young life forever.